When do you remember? There was I was talking to Mike about this. Do you remember how there was gossip around the industry about Joe Coles coming through as a kid at West Ham? And the same thing happened with Wayne, didn't it? You know, there was suddenly gossip around the football circuit that there was a kid at Everton.
Yeah.
That was a phenomenon. You know, people were talking about it. Can you remember when you first heard about him being mentioned?
I remember him playing against our reserves, and I think David May played that night, centre half, and I think Gary Neville might have played. But I just remember the lads then speaking about him, just saying that they had a lad up front who he's only 15 or 16, and he was frightening. He was, he just give the lads headaches all night, running, dropping in, receiving the ball, turning, dribbling, running in behind, and he was just a constant threat. So that's the first time I'd ever heard about him. The second time was, well, everyone had heard about him by then, but it must have been his first game at Old Trafford, and he'd come on the right wing, and I was left wing, and I went to close him down, and he just knocked the ball past me. I went, whoa, what happened then? And it was just so quick, and I just didn't expect it, because, you know, he was a big lad, and I just thought I could handle it, and he just went past me as if I wasn't there. I went, whoa. And I instantly knew that, you know, I was coming up against someone who was special.
He was kind of physically precocious, wasn't he? He was like ahead of his years. Yeah. At 15, he looked like he was 22, didn't he? Did that enable him to fit into teams so early?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously helped him. It's also probably hindered him, where people expect him, because he did look like that, to do great things all the time, and, you know, you still forget that, you know, he was only 16, 17, 18, he's going to make mistakes. But yeah, I mean, that definitely helped him physically wise. It was never a problem, the step up from the youth team reserves to the first team.
Do you remember watching in the evening the night he scored the goal against Arsenal, against David Seaman for Everton as a 17-year-old?
Yeah.
Can you remember that night?
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously a lot of hype around his performance and his goal, and it was just one of the many things he did when he was a young player coming through. You know, what special players do, they score goals or produce pieces of magic that you remember, and you can still picture the goal now. You know, the shape of his shot, and David Seaman diving for the ball. And it's just one of them things that sticks in your mind, that someone special's coming along.
Sven-Goran Eriksson gave him his debut, I think, at Upton Park against Australia, but the big news was that he felt that he could start him against Turkey in a massive qualifier. In fact, England's hardest game in that qualifying for the Euros in 2004, he threw Wayne in up at Sunderland against Turkey.
Sunderland, yeah. Right.
Do you remember, people were shocked that Sven would throw him in at that point.
Yeah, I remember watching the game, and just watching him in particular, really, and he had a good game, and I just remember him just going past players if he wasn't there. I can remember him sort of play. I don't know if he was playing off the left, but I can just imagine him. I just remember him going down that left channel and cutting in and beating a couple of the Turkish players. But yeah, it was like his debut for United. He just took it in his stride, and it was never an issue. It was never, you know, is he going to suffer nerves, or is he going to get overawed by the occasion? Both for England and for United, that wasn't the case.
And then straight after that for England, he went to Portugal in the Euros in 2004 and was a massive, probably the biggest sensation of the tournament, really, as a teenager who grabbed 4 goals very quickly and was his big international impact, wasn't it, that tournament?
Yeah, it was, and I think it was him and Michael up front, and they were terrorising teams, and if he wouldn't have got injured, who knows what would have happened. But yeah, again, not overawed by the occasion or the magnitude of playing in a major tournament. It was just a young kid just doing what he did in the youth team and the reserves on the international stage. So yeah, he's been sort of called, you know, this street footballer, and I think people say that because no matter where he is, no matter if he's on the pitch or on the street, he would still play the same way.
Picking up on that, do you think that he's a kind of an instinctive footballer rather than clearly very technically able, but do you think he's instinctive rather than coached as a player?
I think when you are a young player, a lot of your good things are instinctive. and then that's sort of what you've got to adapt to when people suss you out or game plans against you. That's when you've got to think a little bit more, but still try and keep that instinctive play. But as a young player, I think all young players coming through, they do things instinctively, and he was no different.
So then his story starts to come closer to you because Sir Alex Ferguson becomes interested. There's the famous story, isn't there? Sorry, hang on a second, I'm getting ahead of myself. So he then did you hear that the club were going to sign him? Were you aware of it in advance of it happening? I
think as players, you ask all the players, we're usually last to know. So yeah, you hear rumours, but until it's actually happening and he's pictured signing his contract, you never know what's going to happen. But yeah, obviously exciting when we did sign him because he was such an enormous talent, and yeah, obviously excited to play with him.
It was a lot of money for a teenager. Was there a little bit of doubt amongst the senior pros? 30 million quid for a kid of that age?
I mean, when you pay a lot of money for a young player, there is, but there's players who are nailed on, really, when they're young, and you know that they're going to go on and have great careers. Michael Owen, Wayne Rooney, Ronaldo. These sort of players don't happen very often, young players and carry on and have great careers. So, yeah, I mean, you can never say that it's a cert, but I mean, he was more or less guaranteed that he was going to go on and have a great career.
It didn't feel like a gamble?
No.
So he arrives at the club. In his own autobiography, he talks about not being overawed, walking straight into the dressing room. I think he said he had an argument with Roy Keane on the training pitch first week. Can you remember what he was like when he first got here?
Yeah, well, it helped that he knew a lot of the England players, and that's always helpful when you're walking into a new dressing room and you know some of the players already. But yeah, I mean, it's always been a dressing room which has helped players, new players, settle in, and that was no difference. But to be fair, Wayne had the personality where, he's right, he wasn't overawed, he was ready for the challenge, and some players come to big clubs and it doesn't quite happen, but he was going to make the most of it.
And did he into those early training games, which there was a reputation at the time that new players would be, given a pretty tough time on their first training sessions? Did he cope with all that? Yeah,
well, I mean, he arrived injured, so I think also that helped. Maybe you're in the dressing room, you're in the surroundings, but you actually don't have to perform. But then, obviously, the pressure is when that time comes. But yeah. It's an unforgiving place, the dressing room and the training pitch when you're a new player. Players want to see how good you are. Players who've been there a long time, he might be after your place. So you do your best to test them.
And of course, he made his impact in the Champions League, that first game.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great start for him. I mean, to score a hat-trick on his debut. And 3 different goals as well. So it was the perfect start for him.
That team at that time, he says in his own autobiography, there were a number of young players. There was him and obviously Cristiano Ronaldo. Was there a feeling at the time that the boss had almost put too much emphasis on youth? Were they ready really to mount big challenges, having Rooney and Cristiano at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, there was always going to be inconsistencies because that's what you get with young players, and flashes of brilliance. But when you're young, you're not as consistent as maybe an experienced player or an older player. So no, I think the players were exciting and excited, but we had the nucleus of players that were confident and didn't get too down that maybe we didn't win the league for a year, 2 years. We knew that these two especially would come good and the future would be bright.
He had initially some disciplinary issues. He got sent off relatively early, I think, at Birmingham. Was there a point at which it was an issue for the club that he was getting into arguments with referees and maybe a little ill-disciplined in the early part of his career?
I was never worried about it, really. I think we had the right manager who could handle it. And you know, you hear people say you don't want him to take that out of some players' games. And I think if you watch the Newcastle volley that he scores, he's actually arguing with a ref, and the ball drops to him, and he takes his anger out on the ball and just volleys it in the top corner from 25 yards. So as long as you can channel your anger in the right way, then for some players they need it, and it's good for them. But yeah, you just got to be careful not to overstep the mark. And yeah, I don't think there was a major issue where it was continuing to happen. But yeah, he's a feisty player, feisty character, and a winner.
I mean, you obviously played in a number of positions, but a lot of the time you'd be playing wide, putting the ball in for Wayne Rooney. I mean, what would you be expecting him to do as you're trying to beat your man? What kind of a forward was Wayne? What were you thinking he'd be doing as you're getting into a position to cross the ball?
Well, Wayne can do everything. He can run the near post, he can drop off the far post for headers, or he could drop right off the edge of the box for a pullback. So, yeah, I mean, you try and strike up a relationship as a wide player and with the centre forward, and try and get to know what they like. And yeah, I think we instantly struck up a good relationship where I knew where his runs were going to be. And yeah, not every time you got it right, but more often than not, I knew where he was going to be.
Almost every manager who's ever managed Wayne Rooney has played him in a variety of positions. I mean, he says he's happy to do that, but prefers to play centre forward, etc. But everybody for England and Manchester United has always played him in different positions. Why is that?
Because he understands football, and he understands how to play the different positions. Yeah, personally, I thought probably number 10 was, in his younger days, was his best position. Now centre forward over the last 4 or 5 years, because he scores goals, and yeah, that's where he's most dangerous. But he's a clever player, so he can play midfield, he can play off the left, and he has done. So he understands the game, and a manager needs to trust the players. And yeah, he's a player that you can trust no matter what job you ask him to do.
What kind of a captain is he?
I think Wayne's been a really good captain. I think it's obviously been a transitional period. So yeah, he leads off the pitch and he leads on the pitch. Obviously he's an experienced player now, and some people, some players have it as a burden when they become captains. Some people relish it, and like everything else really, he's just took it in his stride and not been overawed. When
we look back on him after his career's over, how will history judge him as a player? Where will they put him in the great pantheon of English footballers? How good has he been?
Well, he's got to be one of the best English footballers that has played for England. Yeah, I mean, he's been a great player for both club and country, and he's come from, young 17, 18-year-old running at players, to a more mature, using his head, using his experience, and a real clever player who can play the majority of the positions in the team.